Heartless millionaire CEO ignored beggars daily, until homeless girl showed her a family photo saying, "This was my family." What happened to them will shock you to your core. The alarm pierced through the Manhattan penthouse at 4:47 a.m., but Victoria Sterling was already awake. She'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, her mind calculating losses, damages, and the mounting legal fees that threatened to destroy everything she'd built. At 36, she was the youngest female CEO in the construction industry, but tonight felt like she might also become the fastest to fall. Victoria's bare feet touched the cold, marble floor as she walked to her floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below her like a glittering empire, but all she could see were the numbers flashing red on her phone screen. Sterling Industries stock had plummeted another 12% overnight. 6 months ago, one of her residential buildings had gone up in flames, taking 12 innocent lives with it. She poured herself black coffee and opened her laptop with mechanical precision. The morning routine never changed. Review casualty reports, instruct her legal team to minimize settlements, and delete the dozens of interview requests from journalists still hungry for her statement about the fire. Victoria's fingers moved across the keyboard without emotion, treating each deceased family like a line item in a spreadsheet. The investigative report lay open on her mahogany desk, the same report she'd read 100 times. 2 months before the fire, she had personally approved cutting the electrical maintenance budget by 60%. Unnecessary expenses, she had called them during that board meeting. The money saved had boosted her quarterly profits and earned her a $2 million bonus. Victoria closed the report and checked her calendar. Today's agenda included firing 30 more employees and meeting with her lawyers about the mounting wrongful death lawsuits. She applied her red lipstick with the same cold precision she used to destroy people's livelihoods, never once allowing herself to think about the faces behind the casualty numbers. As she prepared to leave for another day of damage control, Victoria caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back had everything: wealth, power, success, but her eyes were as empty as the hearts of the families she'd torn apart. She straightened her designer blazer and walked toward the elevator, completely unaware that today would be the day her carefully constructed world would begin to crumble. The elevator doors closed with a soft whisper, carrying the Ice Empress down to face a reckoning she never saw coming. Victoria's black Mercedes cut through the morning traffic like a predator stalking prey. Her destination, a hope shelter, a crumbling institution that housed the orphaned children from her building fire. But Victoria wasn't going there out of compassion. She was going to buy the property for pennies on the dollar. The building. Inspector says the foundation is solid. Marcus Sterling, her younger brother and company lawyer, said from the passenger seat. We can demolish the shelter and have luxury condos up within 18 months. Victoria nodded coldly as she reviewed the architectural plans spread across her lap. The shelter sat on prime Manhattan real estate worth $40 million, but the desperate nonprofit would sell for $8 million. It was exactly the kind of ruthless deal that had built her empire. They pulled up to the weathered brick building where a faded sign read, "Hope Shelter. Every child deserves a family." Victoria stepped out in her $1,000 heels, flanked by 3 architects and 2 lawyers, all carrying briefcases and calculators instead of hearts. Inside, the shelter director, Mrs. Patterson, led them through cramped hallways lined with children's drawings. Victoria saw only square footage and renovation costs. When Mrs. Patterson mentioned that 15 children still lived here, all orphaned by the Sterling Industries fire, Victoria's expression never changed. These weren't victims to her. They were obstacles to profit. The heating system needs replacement, Mrs. Patterson explained nervously, and the roof leaks in 3 places. Victoria made notes about demolition savings. As they toured the dormitories, Victoria calculated. Tear down these walls, install marble floors, add a rooftop pool. She could see luxury penthouses where traumatized children currently slept on. Donated mattresses. Then, through a grimy window, Victoria spotted movement in the alley. A small figure pressed against the shelter's back gate. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, impossibly thin, wearing clothes that had seen too many nights on the street. The child clutched something against her chest, like a lifeline. Victoria paused, studying the girl's desperate posture. There was something in the way the child stared at the building, not like someone begging for help, but like someone trying to will a miracle into existence. The girl's fingers traced the fence, and Victoria could see her lips moving, as if she were having a conversation with the empty air. "Mrs. Sterling?" the architect prompted. "Should we measure the courtyard?" Victoria tore her gaze away from the window. "Yes," she said sharply. "Every square inch." But as they continued the tour, Victoria found herself glancing back toward that window, wondering why a homeless child would stand vigil outside an orphanage instead of trying to get inside. She was about to discover that some questions, once asked, demand answers that change everything. 7-year-old Lily Rodriguez pressed her face against the cold metal bars of the Hope Shelter's gate, her breath creating small clouds in the winter air. For 6 months, this place had been her prison disguised as salvation. The other children called her Fire Girl and whispered that death followed her wherever she went. The overworked staff barely noticed when she went hungry for days or cried herself to sleep clutching her teddy bear. 2 weeks ago, when Mrs. Patterson announced the shelter was closing and all children would be transferred to facilities upstate, Lily had made a desperate choice. She couldn't leave Manhattan. This was where her parents died, where their spirits might still be searching for her. So she ran. Living on the streets had been a nightmare of cold nights in subway stations, scraps of food from garbage cans, and the constant terror of dangerous strangers. But every morning, Lily returned to the shelter's gate like a faithful dog waiting for its master. She wasn't hoping to get back inside. She was hoping for a miracle. The burned photograph, pressed against her chest, was all she had left of her family. Miguel and Carmen Rodriguez, her beloved parents, smiled back at her from the damaged picture taken in happier times. Sometimes Lily talked to the photo, telling her parents about her day, asking them to send someone who could help her. When the fancy black car pulled up and the elegant woman in expensive clothes stepped out, Lily's heart jumped. She recognized Victoria Sterling from the news reports about the fire, the powerful businesswoman whose company owned their building. If anyone could bring her parents back, surely it would be someone this important and rich. Lily watched through the fence as Victoria toured the shelter with her entourage of suits and briefcases. This woman commanded respect, made people listen, had the kind of power that could move mountains. As Victoria emerged from the building, Lily made her choice. With trembling legs, she approached the gate. "Excuse me," Lily called out, her voice small but determined. "Are you the lady from the television?" Victoria turned, and up close, Lily could see she was even more beautiful and intimidating than on the news. The woman's eyes were cold blue, like winter ice, but Lily had come too, far to back down now. "I need your help," Lily said, carefully pulling out the burned photograph. Her hands shook as she held it up for Victoria to see. "This was my family, Mama Carmen and Papa Miguel. They lived in your building when it caught fire." Victoria's face went completely white as she stared at the photo. "The people at the shelter said my parents went to heaven," Lily continued, her voice cracking with desperate hope. "But I think maybe they just got lost in all that smoke. You're important and powerful. Could you help me find them? I've been waiting for 6 months, and I think they might be looking for me too." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Victoria's lawyer started to step forward, But Victoria held up her hand, her eyes never leaving the photograph of the family she had unknowingly destroyed. Lily clutched the picture tighter. I can be a really good girl if you help me. I promise I won't be any trouble. I just want my mama and papa back. Victoria's world tilted on its axis as she stared at the photograph in Lily's small hands. The faces smiling back at her weren't strangers from a casualty report. They were Miguel Rodriguez, 34, apartment 2B, and Carmen Rodriguez, 31, apartment 2B. She knew these names by heart because she'd seen them on the list of fatalities dozens of times. Tell me about that night, Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily's eyes lit up with painful hope. You remember them? You knew my mama and papa? Victoria couldn't speak. She could only nod as her throat constricted with a terror she'd never experienced. It was really late, Lily began, settling into the story like she'd told it 1,000 times. I was sleeping in my bed with Mr. Buttons. She held up a worn teddy bear missing one eye. Then Mama started screaming, and there was so much smoke. I couldn't see anything. Marcus shifted uncomfortably behind Victoria, but she held up a hand to silence him. Completely transfixed by the child's words, Papa carried me to the window, and there were these big men with ladders down on the street. The fire was so loud, like a monster roaring. Papa said, Lily, we're going to play airplane, and you're going to fly down to those nice men. Lily's voice got smaller. But I didn't want to play airplane. I wanted to stay with them. Victoria felt physically sick as she pictured the scene, the desperate parents, the smoke, the impossible choice they faced. Mama was crying when she kissed me goodbye. She said, Be brave, Mia. We'll come find you soon. Then Papa threw me out the window to the firemen. Lily looked up at Victoria with devastating innocence. That was 6 months ago. They said they'd come find me, but maybe they got lost. Sometimes when buildings burn down, people forget where things are. The photograph fluttered in Lily's hands, and Victoria could see the apartment number clearly visible in the background. 2B, the same apartment where she had personally denied the electrical upgrade request 8 weeks before the fire. She remembered the maintenance report. Critical wiring issues require immediate attention. Estimated cost $180,000. Her signature was on the rejection form. Unnecessary expense. Defer maintenance until next fiscal year. The fireman said, Mama and Papa couldn't come down the ladder because the fire got too big, Lily continued. But I keep thinking maybe they climbed out a different window and they're looking for me somewhere else. That's why I stay here, so they can find me when they come back. Victoria's hands began to shake uncontrollably. This wasn't just any orphan from the fire. This was the child of Miguel and Carmen Rodriguez, who had died because she chose profits over their lives. She had personally signed their death warrant to save money for her quarterly bonus. They used to sing to me every night, Lily said softly. Mama would make these special pancakes on Sunday mornings, and Papa would carry me on his shoulders to the park. Do you think when you help me find them, they'll remember our songs? Victoria staggered backward as the full weight of her guilt crashed down. She wasn't looking at just another victim. She was looking at the living, breathing consequence of her greed. Every night this child had spent alone, every meal she'd missed, every tear she'd cried, was Victoria's fault. Please, Lily whispered, stepping closer. You're the most important person I know. If you can't help me find them, who can? Victoria opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. How do you tell a 7-year-old that her parents are never coming home because you killed them for money? Victoria's voice cracked as she knelt down to Lily's eye level. Sweetheart, when did you last eat? The question seemed to confuse Lily, who tilted her head thoughtfully. Yesterday, I think. A nice man at the subway gave me half his sandwich. But I'm not hungry right now. I just want to know about Mama and Papa. Victoria's heart shattered as she took in the child's appearance more carefully. Lily's clothes hung loose on her tiny frame. Her cheeks were hollow, and dark circles shadowed her bright brown eyes. This little girl had been surviving on the streets for 2 weeks while Victoria lived in luxury, completely oblivious to the suffering she'd caused. Marcus, cancel everything, Victoria said sharply, never taking her eyes off Lily. We're going to the hospital. Victoria, we can't just... Marcus started. Now. Victoria's voice carried authority that made her entire. Entourage stepped back. Within 20 minutes, they were at Manhattan Presbyterian's emergency room. Victoria carried Lily, who had fallen asleep in the car, exhausted from weeks of surviving on nothing. The child felt impossibly light in her arms, like a bird with broken wings. Dr. Sarah Kim took one look at Lily and immediately ordered a full medical workup. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and what appears to be pneumonia, she told Victoria grimly. This child needs immediate intervention. How long has she been on the streets? 2 weeks, Victoria whispered, watching as nurses inserted N4 into Lily's small arm. She's lucky to be alive, Dr. Kim said. Children this young don't last long in winter weather without proper shelter and nutrition. As Lily received fluids and antibiotics, Victoria sat beside the hospital bed, staring at the child's peaceful face. For the first time in months, Lily looked safe. But Victoria knew that safety was an illusion. She was the monster who had destroyed this child's world. Margaret Chun, the social worker, arrived within an hour. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with kind but sharp eyes that seemed to see through every pretense. Miss Sterling, Margaret said, settling into the chair across from Victoria. I've been searching for Lily Rodriguez for 2 weeks. The shelter reported her missing, and we've had every agency in the city looking for her. How exactly did you find her? Victoria had rehearsed her lie during the car ride. I was visiting the Hope Shelter on business when I noticed her outside the gates. She seemed lost and hungry, so I brought her here. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Business? What kind of business does a construction CEO have with a children's shelter? Charitable considerations, Victoria said vaguely, hating how easily the lies came. Miss Sterling, I need you to understand something, Margaret said firmly. Lily Rodriguez has been through extraordinary trauma. She lost both parents in the Sterling Industries fire 6 months ago. She's been in and out of foster placements because of severe PTSD and attachment issues. This child doesn't need another wealthy benefactor looking for a tax write-off or good publicity. Victoria flinched at the mention of her company name. I'm not looking for publicity. Then what are you looking for? Margaret asked pointedly. Victoria looked at Lily's sleeping form, a child's small hand still clutching that burned photograph. I want to help her. Margaret studied Victoria's face for a long moment. I'll allow you to cover her medical expenses for now, but understand this. Lily needs stability, not charity. She needs a real family, not a guilty corporation trying to make amends. The word guilty hit Victoria like a physical blow. Margaret had no idea how accurate that assessment was. I understand, Victoria said quietly. I hope you do, Margaret replied, because if you're planning to play savior and then disappear when the novelty wears off, You'll destroy what's left of this child's ability to trust anyone. As Margaret left, Victoria remained beside Lily's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of the child's chest. She had no idea how to be anyone's savior. She only knew that she had destroyed this little girl's world, and somehow she had to find a way to rebuild it. The hospital room door burst open with such force that Lily jolted awake with a frightened cry. Marcus Sterling stormed in, his face flushed with panic, followed closely by their Aunt Evelyn Sterling, whose silver hair was perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "Victoria, what the hell are you doing?" Marcus hissed, trying to keep his voice low but failing miserably. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Lily shrank back against her pillow, clutching Mr. Buttons to her chest as she watched the angry adults invade her safe space. Victoria immediately moved protectively closer to the bed. "Lower your voice," Victoria warned. "You're scaring her." "Scaring her?" Evelyn laughed bitterly, her designer heels clicking against the linoleum floor. "Victoria, darling, you're the one who should be scared. Do you know what the federal investigators will think when they discover you've personally rescued a victim from your own building fire?" Marcus pulled out his phone, showing Victoria a screen full of missed calls and urgent messages. "Our lawyers have been trying to reach you all morning. The FBI investigation is accelerating. They're weeks away from finding your signature on those maintenance deferral forms." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face, but Lily was listening to every word with the sharp attention that traumatized children develop for adult conversations about their fate. "If they discover you formed an emotional attachment to a fire victim," Evelyn continued coldly, "it will look like either an admission of guilt or an attempt to obstruct justice by manipulating a witness." "She's 7 years old," Victoria said through gritted teeth. "She's not a witness. She's a child who needed help." "She's evidence," Marcus snapped. "Evidence that our company's negligence killed her parents. And now you've made yourself personally liable by getting involved with her." Lily's eyes grew wide as she began to understand the conversation. These well-dressed people were talking about her parents being dead, about fires, about someone being in trouble because they helped her. "The Sterling Industries stock is already in free fall," Evelyn said, pacing the small room like a caged predator. "We're facing 17 wrongful death lawsuits and a federal investigation. The last thing we need is the CEO playing house with a victim's orphan." "I'm not playing house," Victoria said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Then what would you call this?" Marcus gestured at the scene, Victoria sitting protectively beside Lily's bed, a child's small hand resting trustingly in hers. "You've known this kid for 6 hours, and you're already acting like her mother." "Maybe because no one else will," Victoria shot back. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Victoria, listen to me very carefully. You're having a psychological breakdown due to the stress of the investigation. You're latching on to the first victim you've encountered because your guilt is driving you insane." This isn't compassion, it's pathology. Lily began to tremble, understanding enough to know that these people wanted to separate her from Victoria, the first person in months who had treated her with kindness. "You need to walk away right now," Marcus said firmly. "Let social services handle her. Focus on saving what's left of our family fortune, and pray that the FBI doesn't interpret this as witness tampering." "No," Victoria said simply. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of Lily's heart monitor. "What did you say?" Evelyn asked incredulously. "I said no." Victoria stood up, her decision crystallizing with each word. "I'm not walking away from her." "Then you're walking away from us," Marcus said coldly. "From the company, from the family, from everything we've built." Lily looked up at Victoria with frightened eyes, and in that moment, Victoria realized that some choices define who you really are. "Then that's a choice I'll have to live with," Victoria said quietly, as Marcus and Evelyn stormed out. Making threats about legal action and family loyalty, Lily whispered, "Are they going to take me away?" "From you?" Victoria looked down at this broken child, who had somehow become the most important thing in her world. "Over my dead body," she whispered back. 3 days later, Victoria sat across from Margaret Chun in the sterile conference room of Child Protective Services, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The stack of papers between them represented the most important contract of her life: temporary emergency foster care for Lily Rodriguez. "Miss Sterling, I want to be absolutely clear about what you're requesting," Margaret said, her pen poised over the documents. "You're asking to become primary caregiver for a severely traumatized child with no prior experience in childcare, no family support system, and while facing a federal investigation that could land you in prison." "That's correct," Victoria replied. Without hesitation, Margaret set down her pen and studied Victoria's face. "In my 20 years as a social worker, I've never had a Fortune 500 CEO request emergency foster placement, especially not for a child connected to their own company's liability case. Lily needs stability," Victoria said. "She's been bounced between the shelter, the streets, and hospital beds for months. She deserves better." "She deserves a lot of things," Margaret agreed. "But what she needs most is someone who won't disappear when the cameras stop rolling or the guilt wears off." The words stung because Victoria knew they were fair. "I'm not going anywhere." Margaret slid a second stack, papers across the table. "These are my conditions, non-negotiable. Bi-weekly supervised visits from CPS, mandatory. Trauma counseling for Lily with Dr. Rebecca Martinez 3 times a week. Parenting classes for you every Saturday for 6 months. Complete psychological evaluation for both you and Lily within 30 days. Victoria nodded, reading through each requirement. "Additionally," Margaret continued, "any sign that this arrangement is harmful to Lily's emotional or physical well-being, and I will remove her immediately. One missed appointment, one failed evaluation, one indication that you're treating her like a pet project instead of a child, and this ends." "I understand." Margaret leaned back in her chair. "Ms. Sterling, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Why are you really doing this?" Victoria looked through the conference room window, where Lily sat in the waiting area, coloring a picture of what appeared to be a house with 2 stick figures holding hands. The child had barely left Victoria's side since the hospital, following her everywhere with the desperate attachment of someone who had lost too much. "Because she asked me to help her find her parents," Victoria said quietly. "And I can't bring them back, but maybe I can give her something else." "What's that?" "A reason to believe that not every adult will abandon her." Margaret studied Victoria for a long moment, then signed the first document. 6 months, Miss Sterling. Prove to me that this isn't just expensive guilt management." That afternoon, Victoria stood in the center of her penthouse's guest floor, which she had hastily converted into a child's bedroom. She'd hired decorators who'd filled the space with every toy and comfort she could imagine. A canopy bed with pink silk sheets, a play kitchen, a library of children's books, and enough stuffed animals to stock a toy store. When Lily saw the sea room, she froze in the doorway, overwhelmed. "Do you like it?" Victoria asked nervously. Lily nodded politely, but Victoria could see the fear in her eyes. Everything was too much, too perfect, too different from the small, simple apartment where she'd lived with her parents. That night, Victoria found Lily sleeping on the floor beside the elaborate bed, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, clutching her one-eyed teddy bear instead of the expensive stuffed animals surrounding her dot. Victoria quietly lay down on the floor beside her, pulling a blanket over both of them. "The bed's too big," Lily whispered in the darkness. "We can get a smaller one tomorrow," Victoria promised. "And too high. I can't see the door from up there. We'll fix that too." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Victoria?" "Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to get tired of me like the other people did?" Victoria's heart broke a little more. "Never, Lily. I promise you that. Even if I have bad dreams? Especially then." As Lily finally drifted off to sleep, Victoria stared at the ceiling, realizing she had just made a promise she wasn't sure she knew how to keep. But for the first time in her life, someone else's well-being mattered more than her own success. The transformation had begun. The screaming started at 2:17. Victoria bolted upright in her bed, her heart hammering as Lily's terrified shrieks echoed through the penthouse. She ran barefoot down the hallway, finding the 7-year-old threshing in her small replacement bed, still fast asleep but fighting invisible flames. "Mama, Papa, I can't reach you." Lily cried out, her small hands clawing at the air as if trying to climb through smoke. "The fire is too big. Papa, catch me." Victoria had read about night terrors in the parenting books she'd devoured over the past week, but nothing had prepared her for the raw anguish of watching Lily relive her parents' death in vivid detail. "Lily, sweetheart, you're safe," Victoria whispered, gently touching the child's shoulder. Lily's eyes snapped open, wild with panic. For a terrifying moment, she didn't recognize Victoria at all. She scrambled backward against the headboard, hyperventilating. "Where are they? Where are Mama and Papa?" The fire took them. Lily gasped between sobs. "I saw them in the window, but I couldn't fly back up to save them." Victoria's chest tightened as she realized Lily blamed herself for surviving when her parents didn't. The child believed she should have somehow flown back up to the burning building to rescue them. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the trauma specialist, had warned Victoria that Lily's PTSD episodes would be severe. The child had witnessed her parents' final moments and carried survivor's guilt that would take years to heal. But experiencing it firsthand was devastating. "It wasn't your fault, baby," Victoria said softly, slowly moving closer. "Your Mama and Papa wanted you to be safe. That's why they sent you down to the firemen. But I left them," Lily wailed. "I was supposed to stay with them forever." Victoria carefully gathered Lily into her arms, feeling the child's tiny body shake, with grief that no 7-year-old should have to carry. They sat together in the darkness while Lily cried for parents who would never come home. "Tell me about your mama's pancakes," Victoria said eventually, trying to redirect Lily's thoughts away from the fire. Through her tears, Lily began to describe Sunday mornings in the Rodriguez apartment. How Carmen would make heart-shaped pancakes and let Lily help crack the eggs. How Miguel would play guitar while they cooked, singing silly songs that made Lily giggle. "Papa said I had the most beautiful laugh in the whole world," Lily whispered. "But I haven't laughed since the fire. I think I forgot how." Victoria held her tighter. "Maybe we can remember together." The next night brought another nightmare. This one even more vivid. Lily woke up trying to save invisible people from the flames, begging Victoria to help her climb back into the fire to rescue her parents. For 3 hours, Victoria held the sobbing child, singing half-remembered lullabies. From her own childhood. By the 4th night, Victoria had moved a cot into Lily's room. She couldn't bear to let the child face the demons alone. "Victoria?" Lily whispered in the darkness after another episode had passed. "I'm here, sweetheart. Do you think Mama and Papa can see me from heaven?" Victoria's throat constricted. "What? Do you think?" I think maybe they're worried because I'm sad all the time. Mama used to say that when I smiled, it made the whole house brighter. Lily turned toward Victoria's cot. But everything feels dark now. You know what? Victoria said gently. I think your mama and papa would want you to find light again. Little by little. Not because you have to forget them, but because they loved your smile so much. Will you help me find the light again? Victoria reached across the space between their beds and took Lily's small hand. Every single day, I promise. As Lily finally drifted back to sleep, Victoria lay awake staring at the ceiling. Each nightmare revealed more about the family. She had destroyed their Sunday traditions, their inside jokes, their dreams for Lily's future. Miguel had been saving for Lily's college fund. Carmen had been teaching her to read in both English and Spanish. Victoria squeezed her eyes shut, but she couldn't escape the truth. She hadn't just taken 2 lives in that fire. She had destroyed a family's entire universe of love, hope, and possibility. And now she was trying to rebuild something from those ashes, not knowing if love could ever grow in soil so poisoned by her own guilt. But as Lily's breathing evened out beside her, Victoria made a silent vow. She would spend every day for the rest of her life trying to give this child back even a fraction of what she had stolen from her, even if it killed her trying. A subpoena arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a federal marshal who handed Victoria the documents with the cold efficiency of death itself. She read the words through trembling fingers. The United States versus Sterling Industries, a federal criminal investigation for negligent homicide and corporate manslaughter. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Victoria's defense attorney, Robert Crawford, explained during their emergency meeting. Someone leaked internal documents to the FBI. They know about the maintenance cuts, and they're specifically looking for authorization signatures. Victoria felt the walls of her office closing in. Through the glass conference room, she could see FBI agents boxing up files from her assistant's desk. They were methodical, relentless, hitting closer to the smoking gun that would destroy her. Life. How long before they find my signature? She asked. Days, maybe a week, Robert said grimly. Victoria, you need to understand the severity of this situation. Federal negligent homicide charges carry 25 years to life. The families are pushing for maximum sentences. Meanwhile, Marcus and Evelyn had launched their own war. They'd hired private investigators to document every moment Victoria spent with Lily, building a case that she was mentally unfit to care for a child. The photographs arrived in Victoria's email that afternoon, images of her crying in Lily's bedroom. During nightmare episodes, looking exhausted and overwhelmed during their grocery shopping trips, appearing unstable during parent-teacher conferences at Lily's new school. This is our insurance policy, Marcus explained during a tense phone call. If you won't distance yourself from that child voluntarily, we'll prove to child services that you're using her as an emotional crutch while facing criminal charges. But the cruelest blow came from an unexpected source. Maria Rodriguez, Miguel's sister from Los Angeles, called Victoria's penthouse that evening. Ms. Sterling. Maria's voice was cold and calculating. I understand you have my niece. Victoria's blood ran cold. You're Lily's aunt? Miguel's sister. I've been out of touch with the family for several years. But recent events have brought certain opportunities to my attention. Victoria could hear the greed in Maria's voice, and her stomach turned. I've been contacted by some very generous people who are concerned about Lily's welfare, Maria continued. They've offered to help me secure proper custody of my niece and relocate her somewhere safer, away from all this legal trouble you're facing. The implication was clear. Marcus and Evelyn had found Lily's distant relatives and were bribing them to claim custody, removing Lily from Victoria's life and eliminating any emotional complications before the criminal trial. Lily doesn't know. You, Victoria said desperately. She's never even heard your name. Family is family, Miss Sterling. Blood is thicker than. Whatever this arrangement is. Maria's voice turned poisonous. I'll be in New York next week to collect her. I suggest you say your goodbyes. That night, as Victoria sat beside Lily's bed, during another nightmare episode, she realized she was fighting a war on multiple fronts. The FBI was closing in on evidence that could imprison her for life. Her own family was sabotaging her relationship with Lily to protect their fortune. And now biological relatives she'd never heard of were coming to steal the only good thing she'd found in the wreckage of her life. Victoria? Lily whispered as she calmed down from her latest terror. You look scared? Are you having bad dreams too? Victoria smoothed Lily's hair, trying to hide her panic. Just thinking about grown-up things, sweetheart. Are the bad people going to take me away from you? Lily asked with the terrible intuition that traumatized children develop. I heard some of your phone calls. There are people who want to separate us. Victoria's heart shattered. She couldn't lie to this child who had already been betrayed by so many adults. Some people think it would be better for you to live somewhere else, Victoria admitted carefully. Lily sat up in bed, her eyes wide with fear. But I don't want to live somewhere else. I want to stay with you. You're the only one who holds me during the scary dreams. I know, baby. I want you to stay too. Then don't let them take me, Lily pleaded, grabbing Victoria's hand with desperate strength. Promise me you won't let them take me away. Victoria looked into those trusting brown eyes and made a promise she had no idea how to keep. I promise, Lily, whatever happens, I'll fight for you. But as dawn broke over Manhattan, Victoria knew she was running out of time, options, and hope. The federal investigators were closing in. Her family was conspiring against her, and Lily's biological relatives were coming to claim her. The perfect storm was gathering, and Victoria was about to discover just how far she would go to protect the child she'd learned to love. Margaret. Sean arrived at Victoria's penthouse on Friday morning, with a court order and 2 police officers. Her face was grim as she handed Victoria the official documents. I'm sorry, Victoria, but I have no choice, Margaret said. Multiple complaints have been filed questioning your fitness as a guardian. Until we can conduct a full investigation, Lily needs to be placed in protective custody. Victoria felt her world collapsing as she read the fabricated evidence Marcus and Evelyn had submitted. Photos taken out of context, testimonies from concerned observers, and psychological evaluations, questioning her mental stability during the federal investigation. This is all lies, Victoria said desperately. They're trying to manipulate the system. Maybe so, Margaret replied sadly, but I can't ignore formal complaints. Lily will be safe in our temporary care facility until we sort this out. Upstairs, Lily was packing her few belongings, tears streaming down her face. She had heard enough of the adult conversation to understand what was happening. They're taking me away, aren't they? Lily whispered when Victoria entered her room. Victoria made a decision that would change everything. No, sweetheart. They're not. That night, using cash she'd withdrawn from private accounts, Victoria and Lily disappeared into the anonymous sprawl of America. They drove a rented sedan with fake identification documents Victoria had obtained through channels she'd never imagined using. For 2 weeks, they lived like fugitives in roadside motels across Pennsylvania and Ohio. Victoria paid for everything in cash, kept them moving every few days, and for the first time in her privileged life, experienced what it meant to live without power, influence, or security. In a dingy motel room in Cleveland, Victoria learned to braid Lily's hair by watching YouTube videos on her burner phone. She discovered that Lily loved chocolate chip pancakes, but only if they weren't perfectly round. She found out that the 7-year-old was brilliant at math, but still couldn't tie her shoes properly. Why are we hiding? Lily asked one evening as they shared a pizza in their latest motel room. Victoria had been dreading this question. Because some adults make decisions based on what they think is best, even when they're wrong. Are we running away forever? I don't know, sweetheart. I just know that I couldn't let them separate us. Lily climbed into Victoria's lap, something she only did when she felt scared. I'm glad you chose me instead of staying in your fancy house. Victoria's heart broke and soared simultaneously. Choosing you was the easiest decision I ever made. But their hiding couldn't last forever. On a rainy Thursday in a motel outside Pittsburgh, Victoria's burner phone rang with a number she recognized. Margaret Chun. Victoria, I know you think you're protecting her, but you're making everything worse. Margaret's voice was urgent. The FBI has issued a federal warrant for kidnapping. Marcus Sterling provided evidence that you're mentally unstable and dangerous. Victoria closed her eyes, knowing their time was up. There's something else, Margaret continued. I've been digging into those complaints against you. Most of them were fabricated. Your brother and aunt orchestrated this whole thing. But Victoria, they've also provided the FBI with something that changes everything about your case. What do you mean? Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. They gave the investigators the maintenance documents with your signature, the ones that prove you personally denied the repairs that caused the fire. The FBI knows you're directly responsible for Lily's parents' deaths. Victoria felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Through the motel window, she could see Lily playing in the parking lot, chasing raindrops and laughing, actually laughing, for the first time since the fire. Victoria, you need to understand what this means, Margaret said gently. When they arrest you, and they will, Lily will learn the truth about who killed her parents. How do you think that 7-year-old is going to handle discovering that the woman she loves and trusts is the person who destroyed her family? Victoria sank onto the motel bed, watching Lily's innocent joy through the window. Knowing that everything was about to shatter into pieces too, small to ever put back together. The reckoning she'd been running from was finally here. The truth hit Victoria like a sledgehammer to her soul. As she stared at Lily playing innocently in the rain, she finally faced the full horror of what she had done. She wasn't just caring for any orphan. She was raising the child whose parents she had murdered with her greed. Victoria stumbled into the motel bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. When she looked in the cracked mirror, she saw a monster wearing her face. How had she convinced herself she could be Lily's savior when she was actually her destroyer? They returned to Manhattan that night, but Victoria couldn't bring herself to look at Lily during the entire drive. Every smile, every trusting touch, every whispered, I love you, felt like acid burning through her conscience. Back in the penthouse, Victoria began drinking. She started with wine at dinner, progressed to whiskey by midnight, and by morning, she was consuming vodka like water. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped showering. The guilt was devouring her from the inside out. Lily tried desperately to understand the sudden change. Victoria, are you sick? Did I do something wrong? Victoria couldn't even look at her. Just stay away from me, Lily. But why? I thought we were happy. You said you'd never leave me. I lied, Victoria said cruelly, hating herself more with each word. Everything was a lie. Margaret Shawn arrived for a welfare check to find Victoria passed out drunk on the living room floor while Lily sat beside her, trying to wake her up. The 7-year-old had attempted to make breakfast, clean the apartment, and care for Victoria. Like a tiny adult. She won't talk to me anymore, Lily told Margaret through tears. She won't eat the food I make or listen to our songs. Did I break her somehow? Margaret's heart ached as she took in the scene. A traumatized child trying to care for the adult, who was supposed to protect her, not understanding that Victoria was drowning in guilt over a truth too terrible to confess. Marcus and Evelyn seized the opportunity, arriving with emergency custody papers. Look at her, Evelyn said coldly, gesturing at Victoria's unconscious form. She's having a complete psychological breakdown. That child isn't safe here. Lily clung to Victoria's unconscious body, sobbing. Please don't take me away. She's just sad right now, but I can help her feel better. I know how to take care of people who are hurting. But Victoria didn't wake up to defend her. She couldn't bear to face the child whose life she had destroyed, whose trust she had stolen through lies. In her twisted mind, she believed Lily would be better off with anyone other than the woman who had killed her parents. As social workers prepared to remove Lily from the penthouse, the little girl made one last desperate attempt to reach Victoria. Victoria, please wake up, Lily whispered, shaking her gently. I forgive you for being mean to me. Sometimes grown-ups get scared and say things they don't mean. But I still love you, and I still want to be your family. Victoria's eyes fluttered, open just enough to see Lily's tear-stained face full of unconditional love and forgiveness. It was more than she could bear. I'm not your family, Victoria whispered harshly. I'm nobody to you. Go with them. As they carried the screaming, heartbroken child away, Victoria curled into a ball on the floor and wished she could disappear entirely. She had found love for the first time in her life, only to discover it was built on the graves of innocent people. The monster had finally shown her true face. 3 days after Lily's removal, Victoria found herself standing on the edge of her penthouse balcony, 52 floors above the Manhattan streets. The whiskey bottle in her hand was empty, just like everything else in her life. She had destroyed an entire family, betrayed a trusting child, and there was nowhere left to fall. As she contemplated the final step, she heard a sound that stopped her cold, the elevator opening in her penthouse. Through her alcohol-hazed vision, she saw Margaret Shawn leading a small figure into the apartment. Lily? Victoria whispered, stumbling backward from the balcony. The 7-year-old looked terrible, hollow-eyed from crying, thinner than ever, wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago. She ran to Victoria with desperate urgency. I escaped from the foster home, Lily announced breathlessly. I climbed out the window and took 3 buses to get here. Margaret found me in the lobby. Lily, you can't be here, Victoria said, backing away. I'm not good for you. That's not true, Lily said fiercely. You're the only person who stayed with me during the scary dreams. You're the only one who didn't give up on me when I was broken. Margaret watched from the doorway, letting the scene unfold. Lily walked to Victoria's home office and returned with a folder she'd somehow found. Inside were newspaper articles about the fire, legal documents, and investigation reports. Victoria's heart stopped as she realized Lily had discovered everything. I can read now, Lily said quietly, holding up a newspaper clipping with Victoria's photo. Margaret taught me bigger words. I know what these papers say about the fire, about your company, about my mama and papa. Victoria fell to her knees, unable to look at the child she had betrayed so completely. You were the boss of the building where my parents lived, Lily continued with devastating calm. You made the decision that caused the fire. You're the reason they died. Yes, Victoria whispered, the confession ripping from her throat. I killed them, Lily. I chose money over their lives, and they died because of me. Victoria waited for the child's rage, hatred, rejection. Anything would be better than the continued trust in those innocent eyes. Instead, Lily knelt down beside Victoria and took her hands. Victoria, look at me, the 7-year-old said with wisdom no child should possess. You didn't know it was my mama and papa who would die. You didn't want to hurt them. You made a bad choice, but you weren't trying to kill anyone. Victoria sobbed harder. That doesn't matter. They're gone because of me. But you can't bring them back by being sad forever, Lily said softly. And Mama and Papa wouldn't want you to hurt yourself because of what happened. They were good people who forgave others when they made mistakes. Lily wrapped her small arms around Victoria's shoulders. You've been taking care of me like Mama and Papa would want. You love me, and I love you. That doesn't erase what happened, but it means something new and good grew from something terrible. How can you forgive me? Victoria whispered. Because that's what families do, Lily said simply. And you're my family now, the only one I have left. In that moment, Victoria understood that redemption wasn't about earning forgiveness. It was about accepting it, even when you didn't deserve it, and spending the rest of your life trying to be worthy of such grace. The morning after Lily's devastating forgiveness, Victoria stood before a room full of cameras and recorders, her hands trembling as she approached the podium. Margaret Chun sat in the front row beside Lily, who had insisted on being there to support Victoria through the hardest moment of her life. My name is Victoria Sterling, she began, her voice cracking. 6 months ago, my company's negligence caused a fire that killed 12 innocent people. I personally approved the budget cuts that led to their deaths, including Miguel and Carmen Rodriguez, the parents of the little girl who somehow found the strength to forgive me when I couldn't forgive myself. The room erupted in flashes and shouted questions, but Victoria continued. I'm here to take full responsibility for every death, every injury, every family destroyed by my greed. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends, starting with dedicating my entire fortune to the victims' families and fire safety reform. The legal consequences were swift and severe. Victoria pled guilty to 12 counts of negligent homicide, facing 25 years in federal prison. But before sentencing, something unexpected happened. Letters began arriving from the victims' families. Not all of them, but enough to matter. They had watched Victoria's transformation through Lily's eyes, seen genuine remorse instead of corporate damage control, and several asked the judge for leniency in exchange for Victoria's continued work with fire safety advocacy. Your Honor, Maria Santos, whose husband died in the fire, testified at Victoria's sentencing hearing. We cannot bring back our loved ones. But this woman has shown us what true accountability looks like. She saved one of our children when she could have walked away. Victoria received 5 years in minimum security, prison with eligibility for supervised release, in 3 years for community service. More importantly, the judge approved her petition for Lily to remain in her legal custody with Margaret Chun, serving as guardian during Victoria's incarceration. The Sterling Industries fortune, once worth over $800 million, was liquidated entirely. Every cent went to victim compensation, fire safety research, and a trust fund for Lily's future. Victoria emerged from wealth to relative poverty, but for the first time in her life, she felt genuinely rich. She took a job as a safety inspector for low-income housing, earning $45,000 a year, less than she used to spend on a single business dinner. But she found purpose in protecting families like the Rodriguezes, ensuring that no other parent would die because someone chose profits. Over safety, Lily thrived in their new, simpler life. She attended public school, made friends easily. And slowly healed from her trauma through therapy and Victoria's unwavering love. The nightmares became less frequent, replaced by dreams about her future. On weekends, they visited Miguel and Carmen's grave together. Victoria would update them on Lily's progress while Lily placed fresh flowers and told her parents about her week. "Mama Carmen, Papa Miguel," Lily said during one visit, "Victoria taught me how to ride a bike this week. She fell down more than I did, but she kept trying because she promised you she'd teach me everything you would have taught me." Victoria knelt beside the headstone, no longer consumed by guilt, but motivated by gratitude. "I can't undo what I did," she whispered to the graves. "But I promise you, your daughter will know she is loved, protected, and worthy of every dream you had for her." As they walked home through Central Park, Lily slipped her hand into Victoria's. "Do you think they're proud of us?" Victoria looked down at this remarkable child who had taught her that redemption was possible, that love could grow in the most devastated soil. "Yes, sweetheart, I think they are." 2 years later, Marcus and Evelyn Sterling launched their final assault. They had watched in fury as Victoria found happiness in poverty while they struggled with the ruins of their fortune. "She destroyed everything," Evelyn spat to their lawyer. "A century of sterling wealth, gone because of her guilt complex. She needs to lose that child." They filed an emergency petition claiming Victoria was unfit due to her criminal record. Their hired psychiatrist, Dr. Walsh, testified that Victoria suffered from pathological guilt syndrome. "Ms. Sterling uses this child to manage her own trauma," Dr. Walsh declared in court. "It's unhealthy codependency, not genuine love." Marcus painted Victoria as dangerous. "Your Honor, my sister killed this child's parents. How can a convicted felon raise her victim's daughter? It's unconscionable." But Margaret Chun requested to testify for Victoria. "I've supervised this family for 3 years." Victoria transformed from a cold CEO into a devoted mother. "This is real love, not guilt management." Dr. Martinez, Lily's therapist, followed. "Lily has made remarkable progress under Victoria's care. Her trauma symptoms have decreased significantly. Removing her would be devastating." Finally, 9-year-old Lily addressed the judge directly. "Your Honor, I know Victoria made a terrible mistake that killed my first parents. But she's spent every day trying to make it right. Uncle Marcus and Aunt Evelyn never visited me in the shelter. They never cared if I was scared or hungry. But Victoria held me during nightmares and learned to braid my hair." Lily's voice strengthened. "I forgave Victoria because my real parents taught me people can change. If you take me away now, you're punishing us for something we've already forgiven." Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence. A thriving child versus relatives motivated by money. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, your petition is denied. This court finds your motivations financially driven, not based on genuine concern. Victoria Sterling retains full custody." As Marcus and Evelyn stormed out defeated, Lily ran to Victoria's arms. "We won," Lily whispered. "No, sweetheart," Victoria replied, holding her tight. "We survived. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all." The family that had been forged in tragedy and tempered by forgiveness had finally found peace. Their bond, tested by guilt, strengthened by truth, and sealed by unconditional love, could never be broken by those who valued money over human connection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, But tonight, Victoria and Lily walked home together, knowing they had fought for their love and won. 5 years after the fire that changed everything, Victoria Sterling knelt beside 2 granite headstones in Woodlawn Cemetery, her hands steady as she arranged fresh white roses. Beside her, 11-year-old Lily Rodriguez placed a hand-drawn picture against her parents' memorial, a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "Mama Carmen, Papa Miguel," Lily said softly, "I brought Victoria to meet you properly today. She's been taking care of me just like you would have wanted." Victoria's throat tightened as she watched this remarkable child, now thriving in 6th grade, speak to her deceased parents with the same love and respect she'd always shown them. The nightmares had stopped 2 years ago, replaced by dreams of her future as a teacher. She wanted to help other children who had experienced trauma. "I told them about your promotion at work," Lily continued, glancing at Victoria with pride. "You're the head safety inspector now, making sure families stay safe in their homes." Victoria smiled through her tears. Her salary of $65,000 was a fraction of her former wealth, but she had never felt richer. Their small apartment in Queens was filled with laughter, homework battles, and the comfortable rhythms of an ordinary family. "And guess what?" Lily added, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. "I made honor roll again. Victoria helped me with my math, just like Papa used to do." As the sun set over the cemetery, Victoria finally found the words she'd been carrying for 5 years. "Miguel, Carmen," she whispered, "I can't undo what my choices cost your family. But I promise you, Lily knows she is deeply loved. She remembers your songs, your Sunday pancakes, and the dreams you had for her future. I'm just honored to help those dreams come true." Lily slipped her hand into Victoria's, a gesture that still made Victoria's heart swell with gratitude. "There, not angry anymore," Lily said with the intuitive wisdom that continued to amaze Victoria. "They're grateful you chose to love me instead of running away from the hard stuff." Walking home through the fading light, they passed the memorial park built where Sterling Industries once stood. The bronze plaque read, "In memory of those lost in the Sterling fire. May their families find peace, and may we never forget the cost of choosing profit over people." "Do you ever miss being rich?" Lily asked as they stopped for ice cream from a street vendor. Victoria looked at this beautiful, compassionate child who had taught her that redemption was possible, that love could grow in the most devastated places. "No, sweetheart. I was never truly rich until I had you." That night, as Victoria tucked Lily into bed, the 11-year-old smiled with the pure joy that had slowly returned to her life. "Victoria?" "Yes, baby? I think Mama and Papa sent you to me. Not to replace them, but to make sure I knew what family love feels like until I see them again." Victoria kissed Lily's forehead, overwhelmed by the grace of a child who had transformed her destroyer into her protector. "Sweet dreams, my beautiful